Hey everyone, welcome to Game Studiously. I've got some quick announcements. First, there are going to be spoilers in this video. I'm discussing a game that has several different endings. I will show and talk about 4 of them. It will not ruin the game for you. So, please continue watching. Second, this is for class. So, I took part in an English course wherein we attempted to theorize everyday life, from labor and acts of war to artworks and ordinary states. So this video might be a little bit academic, but I promise I'll stay away from the unnecessary verbiage. Seriously, I'm going to do my best to keep the theory lively. If you stick with it, I think this stuff can potentially illuminate a really good video game. But that's enough preface. On with the show.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy.
Welcome back to my face. What you just watched was the introduction to 2013's The Stanley Parable, which was co-created by Davey Redden and William Pugh and narrated by the excellent Kevin Brighting. Now, you may have noticed that this part of the introduction ends on the line,
And Stanley was happy.
That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Happiness. What is happiness, if it's definable, and how does it manifest itself in the Stanley Parable? I chose the Stanley Parable because it seems interested in a lot of the ideas that I've seen intersecting with happiness in my theoretical research. The research I did on theory, the research itself wasn't theoretical. I did research. Anyway, the ideas I'm thinking about in conjunction with happiness are narrative, consciousness, choice, and more. The Stanley Parable deals with all of these. Before dealing directly with the game, though, I want to lay a theoretical foundation for considering happiness. To start, I'm going to throw it all the way back to Aristotle and his Nicomachean Ethics. Nicomachean? I don't know how to say this word. In
Nicomachean Ethics.
Aristotle tries to pin down happiness, and even he finds it pretty elusive. The best thing he does is suggest that happiness is an end that pretty much everyone aspires to. I think that's fair to say even today. Aristotle says this: often, even the same man identifies it with different things. With health when he is ill, with wealth when he is poor. Ultimately, happiness seems to take the shape of whatever it is we don't have, which is pretty bleak. So we have happiness as this elusive concept that everyone seems to be chasing, but we can't reliably define. But Aristotle's a little bit dated, so I looked into work by Sara Ahmed, an academic whose writing discusses contemporary feminist theory, race theory, and as it turns out, happiness. In Ahmed's The Promise of Happiness from 2010, she takes an interest not exactly in defining happiness, but rather in analyzing the work that happiness does. She complicates my understanding of happiness by arguing that happiness is a social construct. Ahmed suggests that happiness is a promise, an end in the way Aristotle expressed it, that follows certain behaviors and orientations. She talks about happy objects, social goods and ideals that are tied up in a normative portrait of happiness. Sharing the general orientation towards happy objects is how we pursue the promise. For Ahmed, happiness is a social idea that creates scripts for people. Follow gender and sexual norms, marry and have children, and the promise of happiness can be had. For some. In Ahmed's work, we see the variety of ideas that surround an understanding of happiness. Ahmed says that happiness becomes a question of following rather than finding. And the promise of happiness is the promise that the lines we follow will get us there. Here, Ahmed is connecting happiness to the idea of following someone else's narrative. Along with narrative, there's consciousness, and it intersects with happiness in the context of gender. Ahmed understands consciousness often as an awareness of limitation and loss, thinking particularly about the restrictions gender places on women. Consciousness doesn't necessarily mean happiness, and it can often mean a recognition of unhappiness or unhappy circumstances. Finally, there's choice. When a person chooses or speaks against the social goods associated with happiness, that person is read as selfish and as a troublemaker. Ahmed's prominent example is the feminist killjoy. To be willful and choose an alternate path is to ruin others' happiness. So, narrative, consciousness, and choice all intersect with happiness in Ahmed's theory. Now let's take a look at the Stanley Parable and see how it might agree or disagree with her. Okay, so you saw the first part of the introduction. Here's the rest.
And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Stanley steps out of his office to find that all of his coworkers are missing. He winds his way down the hall to a room with 2 open doors, and he has a choice.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Follow the narrator's lead, or deviate from the planned narrative. And that's essentially the game. It's a garden of forking paths, and the player gets to decide which option to take in a series of mostly binary options. Let's take a look and see what happens when we listen to the narrator's directions at every turn.
He might find an coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
So we go up the stairs.
A secret was being held from him. What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845.
Enter the secret code.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Into the monitor room.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing. But here was the proof, the heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content, walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life, for he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
And shut down the mind control company. Victory!
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes! He had won! He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door. Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
There it is. Happiness. And that line again. And Stanley was happy. I don't think it's any coincidence that it's an exact echo of the ending of the introduction. Just like Stanley's work, we've been compliant and pressed a series of buttons in the order we were encouraged to by the narrator. So, is it really happy? If it is, I'd say it's a pretty hollow happiness. After one brief playthrough, we can already start to see Ahmed's idea of happiness as related to following someone else's narrative. But perhaps, unlike Stanley, we are interested in knowledge and power. Let's see what happens when we deviate from the planned narrative. So, we'll go right instead of left.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well.
The narrator becomes a little bit testy.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't 5 years ago.
So here he appeals to a social responsibility, a responsibility to family that is very important in Ahmed's work. I don't think that rejecting the social good of family is the problem here, though. The problem is rejecting the narrator's planned narrative. That's what gets you in trouble. The family appeal is just bait for a vicious trap. In exchange for violating the narrative and jeopardizing happiness, the narrator force feeds the player an overload of consciousness that offers anything but happiness.
This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself, to put your work aside, to let her back into your life. If you can truly place your faith in another, then pick up the phone.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about your day.
Gotcha! Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you?
I hate to fast forward through this because it's really brilliant and vicious and just blatantly torments the player with the artifice of meaningful choices in video games, but it gets pretty real here.
In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
But of course I'm going to do it. I don't have any other option.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself?
Alright, so far, following the narrator has led us to happiness, but not a very satisfying happiness if you're interested in making choices for yourself. And straying from the narrator's path has led us to a brutal sort of consciousness. But let's see if there's another way for us to create our own path. Here, we can unplug the phone. Again, the narrator doesn't take it very well, but this time he's taken by surprise. And now, we get a lesson in choice, which will conveniently allow me to transition topics.
I'm going to stop the game for a moment so we can educate you properly on safe decision-making in the real world. Please observe this helpful instructional video.
Choice. It's the best part of being a real person, but if used incorrectly can also be the most dangerous. For example, in this scenario, a hypothetical real person named Stephen has a choice. He could spend years helping improve the quality of life for citizens of impoverished third world nations, Or he could systematically set fire to every orphan living in a 30-kilometer radius of his house. Which choice would you make? Remember that unlike here, the real world makes sense, and at no time should you make a choice that does not conform to rational logic.
So the narrator takes you back and offers another opportunity to do things the right way, to put the story first, like Stanley would. All along, he lectures the player on how selfish they are not to prioritize the narrator's story. This path concludes with the player stepping out of Stanley's shoes and hearing the narrator plead with him to move.
Do something? Anything? This is more important than you can ever know. I need this. The story needs it.
Here we see that though the narrator resents player choice, he needs a listener/player to participate in the narrative. It's definitely sad, but maybe beautiful if you're a giant dork like me.
That's all right. I'll wait for you to decide what's the right thing to do. Take as much time as you need.
Now that particular path dealt really directly with the idea of choice. But there's one more that really nicely and beautifully and sadly brings together the ideas of choice and happiness. Here it is. We start by deviating from the narrator's path. Then we deviate a little more.
What? Really? I was in the middle of something. Do you have zero consideration for others? Are you that convinced that I want something bad to happen to you? Let me prove that I'm on your side. Give me a chance.
At this point, maybe he's been through enough.
Now listen carefully, this is important. Stanley walked through the red door.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Through the red door, we find one of the most beautiful sections of the game. An ambient, radiant space, glowing.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? If we just stay right here, right in this moment with this place, Stanley, I think I feel happy. I actually feel happy.
Attached to this is a completely gray cement room with a very tall stairwell.
No, wait. Where are you going? Oh no. Stay away from those stairs. If you hurt yourself, if you die, the game will reset. We'll lose all of this.
And so, as the player, my options were to drop out of school and stay in this colorful bliss forever, or until I could no longer pay the electricity bill.
There. See? This is what you want. This is where we can both be happy. We really can. If we stop moving, we just have to stop moving.
Or repeatedly jump from the ledge until death. I chose the latter. It sucks.
Stanley? It looks like you wanted to make a choice after all. Well, this one is yours. Is it over? It's going to restart, isn't it? I'm going back.
Let's listen one more time to the narrator's plea.
You are literally willing to kill yourself to keep me from being happy. Am I reading the situation correctly?
This reminds me of a concept Ahmed offers as an alternative to happiness. Aliveness. Aliveness is defined by going and seeing and doing and fully utilizing oneself. You know, to feel alive. We're familiar with the narrative of someone sacrificing the life they currently lead to pursue happiness. In pursuing aliveness, though, one might sacrifice happiness, both theirs and others, like the narrators, to achieve life. What does it mean if pursuing aliveness means jumping to your death? Well, I think it means that the Stanley Parable is a charming, cynical game that doesn't offer you very many easy options. The happiness is hollow, and death is a primary form of agency for players. But maybe the narrator says it better.
There's someone you... But in his eagerness to prove that he is in control of the story and no one gets to tell him what to do, Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death. Good job, Stanley. Everyone thinks you are very powerful.
Happy yet? Me either. But the question is, do you want to be? In the Stanley Parable, I see constant echoes of Ahmed's complicated understanding of happiness. It seems to be a shallow, socially influenced goal that may run counter to power, knowledge, and aliveness. And even though Ahmed paints a pretty unflattering portrait of happiness, it's still alluring. So, happiness or aliveness? The choice is yours. That's Game Studiously. Thanks for watching.
Bye.